Cheerio Cheers is an amazing, funny, emotional, complex, perfect episode of Cheers. This is the 22nd episode of the third season, directed, of course, by the wonderful James Burrows. And I remember the first time I saw this, I thought it felt quite final. But there are episodes after this. This isn't the finale for season 3. And that's really fascinating in itself. And when I was watching it just now, as always, I made notes. And I think this is the episode with the most notes I've ever made to date. So there are a lot of things I want to discuss. So there will be spoilers from this point on. And I have to say, it's probably one of the best episodes. It's so perfectly written, perfectly executed. It's emotional. And it's emotional for another reason as well, not just within the context of the episodes, but it's the fact that it's the last full episode with Nicholas Colasanto. This is the first time he's been in the show in a good few episodes, and we do get him again in an opening a little down the line, but this is the last full coach episode, and I was really glad to have a really beautiful moment for the thumbnail of this discussion with Coach and Diane, because it was really important to me that I could include Coach in that as his last full episode. Coach was, of course, very funny in this, and I will talk about some of his moments in a moment, but I just wanted to take a moment to acknowledge that this is the last time we get Nicholas Colasanto for a full episode, and that just made it all the more emotional. The first time I saw this episode, I wouldn't have been aware of that, I don't think, so it's definitely something that's hit me quite hard with rewatching. And in fact, with the opening, we get a lot of comedy from Coach. Carla comes in, she's not feeling like her faith is very strong. Cliff tells her to remember Job, and Coach thinks Cliff is trying to say job, and when Carla's out of earshot, Coach does tell him to pronounce it job, and there are several other things that I love from Coach with this that I'll talk about in a moment. But then with the next scene, we have Frasier coming into Cheers, revealing that he's won an award. He's going to be the visiting scholar at the University of Bologna, and he kind of assumed that Diane would want to go with him. And it's revealed that they would be able to travel Europe together for the next 6 months. And Diane is not jumping with joy immediately because, of course, she realizes that there are a lot of things that she'd have to sort out. And she kind of reels off all of these different things, and a lot of them are very expected things. But then she name drops Sam as well. And Frasier is obviously concerned by this. And he raises this point, and Diane kind of suggests that she's worried how Sam will react, when I think it's very clear to the viewer that it's actually Diane not wanting to leave Sam. And Frasier and Sam are alone in Sam's office, and I love them as a pairing. I think Sam and Frasier are so great on screen together, and Frasier confesses that he's concerned that Diane doesn't want to go because she's still very much hung up on Sam. And we have a really interesting exchange there, and I really like how that played out. And then we get Sam and Diane alone, and I love how that played out as well. And it's all quite serious and a little bit somber, and then Sam comes out of the office, tells the gang at Cheers that Diane's going to be leaving for 6 months, and Carla's faith is restored as she gets down on her knees, and we have this wonderful moment where the focus is purely on Rhea Perlman singing I Believe with her hands clasped in prayer, and it's just absolutely amazing. And what I love about this episode, one of the many things I love about this, is that it gets quite serious, and then we'll have a joke. Something funny will happen. And Cheers often does that, but this episode, more than most, it just seems to be so apparent that we have something serious and moving, and then a joke, and then this goes back and forth, and the pacing of the comedy is amazing. It slots in exactly where it needs to be. Diane is saying goodbye to the gang at Cheers, and it's emotional. Again, because it's not the season finale, and I don't want to say too much about the future of Diane with the show, but either way, it felt like the end, but also not the end. So it's a very weird position to be in, but Diane's departure was very emotional, and then we have the kiss between Norm and Cliff. It was just a little kiss on the cheek, but I absolutely loved it, and it amused me so much. And then we have a beautiful moment between Diane and Coach, which again has some comedy in it, but it's Coach thanking Diane for coming back and helping Sam when he turned to drink again. And this was the hardest scene to watch, because while Coach was saying goodbye to Diane, it's almost like we were saying goodbye to Coach, because obviously this is the last full episode with Coach, and it was a real goodbye. In that moment, it was knowing the last time Diane would ever see Coach, and it's hard. It's hard to think about. It's hard to watch. And then, of course, we get some comedy when Diane says, "Stand by him," and Coach goes off to stand next to Sam. And again, it's emotional, but it's funny at the right moments. But it definitely was a lot more emotional this time, knowing what I know about Nicholas Colasanto. We then get an incredibly executed scene, very, very well written as well. And I have so many quotes that I wrote down. I don't know if I'll share all of them, but I will share some, as I have done so far. And we have Sam and Diane alone together for most of the rest of the episode. And Sam is very open and honest and kind of almost wears his heart on his sleeve during this scene, which is very, very unlike Sam and very telling of how he really feels about Diane. And when they're alone together, he says something to the effect of, "I'd appreciate it if you remembered me as a decent person." And that's so telling of how he wants Diane to remember him as well. And he says, "We are friends, aren't we?" And Diane comments that they're good friends. And then they have the goodbye hug, and it's just this beautiful moment. Well, it's more than a moment, it lasts a long time, where Diane and Sam are locked in this embrace, and Diane counts to 3 and says that they'll end the hug in 3 seconds. And she counts to 1, 2, 2.5, 3, and Sam doesn't let go. And neither does Diane. But eventually they break. And then we have this passionate kiss. And I was kind of surprised by how into it Diane was. I feel like, or I'd expected her to kiss him passionately, but then a few seconds later pull away and say, "No, we can't do this, I'm with Frasier." But no, she keeps going with it. This is clearly something she wants, something she needs, something she's needed for a very long time. And it's going perfectly. And then she says, "Wait." And Sam completely blows up at her and reveals his true response. Not that everything he said in this has been a lie, but I think it was a really good sign that there are still multiple sides to Sam, as there are with any person. But the side of him where he let his guard down and showed his true feelings is still only one part of him. There's still this part of him who is annoyed by the way Diane does things, because he thought that she was going to overanalyze everything, when actually she just forgot her purse. And Diane says, and I quote, "Was it going to be one night of passion or something that'll last beyond tomorrow?" And it was very moving and a really inspirational quote that I think everybody can do well to think about in a moment of heat. But then Sam throws in some comedy afterwards and says, and I genuinely laughed out loud, "I've got a feeling this conversation's going to last beyond tomorrow," which amused me a lot. And then the insults start. And Sam has the intelligence of lint, according to Diane. But Sam is still, his guard is still down. He tells Diane to call him if she thinks about things. And she does. So Diane's left Cheers, but it's still not final, because even though she's gone off to Europe, she's still in communication, and we have her phoning Cheers from London, and we get this split screen of Cheers with Sam and Diane in the hotel on the phone together while Frasier is in the shower. And ultimately, Sam asks Diane to send postcards from Europe, and it's such a moving way to end things, this episode at least, because Sam is not ready to let the relationship go. And I think, let's be honest, based on this episode, neither is Diane. I feel sorry for Frasier among all of this, because he's basically caught in a love triangle And part of him knows it. Part of him knows it, but he cares so much about Diane that he's kind of putting it to one side. And it's definitely a very tangled relationship that's clearly not run its course. And I'll say no more about that. I don't want to spoil future episodes, but it's an intense, powerful, moving, emotional, and also funny episode. It's complex. It's very well written. The performances are great, and to say we have a really perfect episode for Nicholas Colasanto's final full episode, I don't think we could have asked for anything more, to be honest. Definitely a really moving episode. Cheerio, cheers will always be perfect.